Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Muhammad Wasim Khan, instructor for Human Resource Management course. In this part of the lecture, we are going to talk about the forecasting techniques. As in the previous part of the lecture, we have discussed trend analysis and ratio analysis. In this lecture, part of the lecture, we would like to continue with the scatter plot. Scatter plot actually shows graphically how two variables, for example, sales and your firm's staffing levels are related. So scatter plot is graphically shows the relationship between two different variables. If they are, then if you can forecast the business activity like sales, you should also be able to estimate your personal needs. On the screen, you can see a table that consists of two columns. The first one represents the size of hospitals in number of beds, and the second column represents the number of registered nurses. So let's discuss this example. Suppose a 500-bed hospital expects to expand to 1,200 beds over the next 5 years. The human resource director wants to forecast how many registered nurses they will need. The human resource director realizes she must determine the relationship between the size of hospitals in terms of number of beds and the number of nurses required. She calls 8 hospitals of various sizes and gets the following figures. Figure 5.3, as you can see here, shows the hospital size on the horizontal axis. It shows the number of nurses on the vertical axis, as you can see here. If these two factors are related, then the points you plot from the data that you have, that you can see in this table, that will tend to fall along a straight line as they do here. So if you carefully draw in a line to minimize the distances between the line and each of the plotted points, you will be able to estimate the number of nurses needed for each hospital size. Thus, for a 1,200-bed hospital, the human resource director would assume she needs about 1,210 nurses. So while simple tools like scatter plots have some drawbacks as well. Like the first one is they generally focus on historical sales or personal relationships and assume that the firm's existing activities will continue as is. They tend to support compensation plans that reward managers for managing even larger staffs, irrespective of the company's strategic needs. And they tend to institutionalize existing ways of doing things even in the face of change. Let's talk about the computerized forecasting as well. So computerized forecast, for computerized forecasting, we actually use the computer software packages to determine the future stuff that we need by projecting sales, volume production, and personnel required to maintain a volume of output. So this software generates the figures on average staff levels required to meet product demands, as well as forecast for direct labor, indirect staff, and exempt staff. The typical metrics that we can use here is like direct labor hours required to produce 1 unit of product. And this is actually the definition of productivity. Productivity is actually the output divided by input. And here the output is the unit of products, while the input is the direct labor hours. So a unit of product divided by a direct labor hour is actually a productivity. Last forecasting technique that we can use is the managerial judgment. Managerial judgment technique is a very common technique of demand forecasting. This approach is applied by small as well as large scale organization. This technique involves two types of approaches, the bottom-up approach and a top-down approach. Under the bottom-up approach, line managers send their departmental requirement of human resources to top management. Top management ultimately forecasts the human resource requirement for the overall organization on the basis of proposals of departmental heads. Under top-down approach, top management forecasts the human resource required for the entire organization and various departments. This information is supplied to various departmental heads for their review and approval. However, a combination of both the approaches, like a participative approach, should be applied for the demand forecasting. Under this approach, the top management and departmental heads meet and decide about the future human resource requirement. So demand of human resources can be forecasted with anonymity under this approach. Now let's talk about the forecasting the supply of inside candidates. First one is qualification inventories. A qualification inventory, as the name suggests, it is an inventory for the qualification. The manual or the computerized records listing the employee's education, their career, and the development interests, languages, special skills they possess, and so on, to be used in the used in selecting inside candidates for promotion. So we are talking about here the inside candidates within the organization. And how many current employees are due to retire, that thing is to be identified here. And what is our usual yearly turnover? This is to be this thing is to be considered in forecasting the supply of inside candidates. And what are our current employees' competency level? So these are some of the factors that should be considered, while forecasting supply of inside candidates. Okay, we have some automatic or computerized and manual systems. So let's talk about the manual system and replacement chart. The personal replacement chart actually is a company record that shows the present performance and promotability of inside candidates for the most important positions. And the position replacement cards, as the name suggests, is a card that is prepared for each position within a company to show the possible replacement candidates and their qualifications. And based on those qualifications, the different candidates are promoted to certain positions within the organization. Okay, let's discuss the example of management. This is actually a management replacement chart that show the development needs of a future divisional vice president. So division vice president, for division vice president, we have three candidates right now. The first candidate here is the vice president production. For example, his name is Jones. And the second one is the vice president sales, Abel is his name, and the third one is vice president finance. And these are some legends that show the competency level of the presidents for of vice president for the division vice president. Okay, so this blue triangle shows the outstanding performance, while the purple represent the satisfactory performance, and the green represent the that particular candidate needs some improvement. And if we move toward the promotion potential category, then we can say that, okay, this blue square represent that particular person or individual is ready now for the to be a division vice president. And this purple one shows that further training, he or she need further training, and this green represent questionable. So if we look at here, so we can say that the vice president production, he is the best person for division vice president. So he is a best candidate for that particular position. So this is actually the manual system and replacement chart. If we talk about the computerized information system, then we can have one thing in our mind, and that is the HRIS, that is the Human Resource Information System. Computerized inventory of information that can be accessed to determine employees' background, their experience, and skills. So this is actually a computerized inventory that make possess some of the important information about the employees, and that information may be related to the background of the employees, their experiences, and their skills, like the work experience codes, like the product and service knowledge they have, like the industry experience they have, and the formal education or qualification. Okay, let's talk about the matter of privacy. That is, this is, I think, one of the most important things that we need to consider here. And we need to ensure the security of HR information. This privacy, I think, is very important in HR department. There is a lot of HR information that need to be kept secure and confidential. Control of HR information can be established through the use of access matrices that limit the users. So legal consideration, for example, the Federal Privacy Act of 1974 gives employees rights regarding who has access to information about their work history and job performance. Now let's talk about the forecasting the supply of external candidates. So the major factors that impact, that have an influence of the on the supply of external candidates are general economic conditions, okay, of an organization, and expected unemployment rate. And the sources of information can be the newspapers or business newspapers or publications, or the economic projections like the government agencies that it also include the Department of Labor or Manpower, the Department of Statistics, and private consultants as well. So we can get help from the private consultants as well. Okay, in the next part